SeatGeek is the official sponsor of the Snake Sports Talk Show, with hundreds of events listed, live concerts, sporting events, and so much more. Go on to SeatGeek.com, enter promo code Snake Sports Talk Show, and save yourself $20.
Live from Las Vegas, the Snake Sports Talk Show with Jake Silva starts right now.
Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. We are live in the 702 up and at 'em on a Sunday. This is the Snake Sports Talk Show. Wherever and however you may be watching and listening, we're live on all social media platforms. iHeartRadio, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and Instagram. That is where you can like, follow, and subscribe to keep you up to date on future and past shows. Little clean cut look today. Yeah, when I got myself a real good haircut, I'm feeling good here on this Sunday. Lots and lots of just absolute dramas all around in sports this weekend. Especially, too, if anybody had ever caught the Celtics and the Sixers game, I hope every single one of you still got a heartbeat today, because this was, it was an immaculate game, but it was nuts. Real good stuff. I think there was still like some questionable plays that were happening all around, but overall, very, very enjoyable, and we got lots to talk about. Of course, here on the first half of the hour, we've got Trey Matthews, Locked On Devils, that's going to be joining us talking about the New Jersey Devils, and Jack Hughes officially arriving. Lauren Willand of Locked On Red Sox. We got some spring training and talking about Boston as well. So we've got a pretty good stacked lineup. And, of course, Garrett Bush will be here with Locked On Browns in the hour 2 slot. So, okay, so here's some spicy stuff that I really want to get myself into. So we all know last offseason, one of the biggest news that broke out was Russell Wilson was traded to Denver. And part of that reason was because things didn't apparently seem to work out in Seattle. That was the narrative. So we go into Denver, and yeah, it seemed a little bit like it was kind of cringy, if you ask me, about Russell Wilson. But we know Denver needed a quarterback. We know that they had been dying for one since the retirement of Peyton Manning. We know this all to be true. But after what we saw last year, now they had a great defense. I think Andrew Ivero was a very, very fantastic defensive coordinator. I wish him the best of luck wherever he may be at for this next up-and-coming season. Now you have Vance Joseph as a defensive coordinator, and Nathaniel Hackett was clearly off his skis. But it does not dismiss away what Russell Wilson could be better at. And that was kind of the thought. He would go in, they've got great weapons, but the problem was Tim Patrick was out for the season. KJ Hamler got hurt. Jerry Jeudy missed some time off, but was able to get back on the field late in the season. And also they had some running back troubles. Javonte Williams was out for the year. So offense was taking a toll. Offense per game was only scoring the minimum of 15 to 17 points a game, if not less than that. And the offense was a god-awful, atrocious one. So Russell Wilson comes in to a Denver offense, doesn't do much, doesn't look like the Russell Wilson we were used to seeing in Seattle when he would be running and scrambling, opening up the pocket, making it easier for his pieces around him to produce. So the big thought and the big talk about it is that not only did Russell Wilson get traded to Denver? But now there's a spicy topic that came about. So a reporter in Seattle who was very much internally about this whole entire story. And right now, Seattle is really getting the whole gist of the truths. So Russell Wilson originally, because you remember the talks about how he was not happy with the offensive line, he was not happy with certain things that Pete Carroll was ending up calling, or how he was really handling the offense and such. But yet the defense, sometimes they'd stay in games. Some of them they were playing situationally good. Sometimes they kind of, missed tackles. They blew a bunch of different, executions. And so Russell Wilson was having serious troubles, and he was having serious issues with it. And he demanded he got an offensive line. Why? Because, Aaron Rodgers was demanding offensive line. Tom Brady was demanding offensive line. So Russell Wilson was hoping that even if these guys, longtime veterans, if they get healthy offensive linemen and they get weapons, maybe Russ could too. But that was the whole talk in the narrative, right? Well, apparently, before making the move to Denver and being and joining now, not only just with Nathaniel Hackett the first year, but now the second year he's got Sean Payton and Vance Joseph. And he's got Joe Lombardi as his offensive coordinator. So once he started to team up with Sean Payton, here was what was said about Russell Wilson. This report, before the move to Denver, was that Russell Wilson wanted Pete Carroll and the rest of the staff out of Seattle and wanted to bring in Sean Payton at the time. And, of course, this put a little bit of a bind on John Snyder. This kind of tied his hands with the whole thing because you're trying to keep Russell Wilson healthy and happy, and you're also trying to make sure that Pete Carroll, and remember, this is his third coaching stint because he tried this twice. Both of them did not succeed well. And here he is in Seattle, wins a Super Bowl, leads a Super Bowl leading roster, and then goes in and he's in 2 Super Bowls, wins 1. And Pete Carroll put together a culture that a lot of young talents, they come in here and they are just that damn good. You do realize that he built that pedigree in USC, right? Or did we all forget that? Pete Carroll, we know, loves youth movements. USC had been dominant in what was the Pac-10 at the time, which is now the Pac-12, and was very dominant. Won a lot of national championships, had several Heisman players from Reggie Bush to Matt Leinart to Carson Palmer and several other players. But it would not work in the NFL for him. That was twice. Goes into Seattle and completely changes the culture. Seattle was officially a championship city, right? So, and Russ to have Pete Carroll out of Seattle and bringing in Sean Payton. Well, John Snyder had a serious decision he had to make. Which was it going to be? Let Russ walk, keep Pete Carroll and the staff? Or was it potentially parting ways with Pete Carroll and keeping Russell Wilson and hoping that everything all just pans out? Last year kind of showed you exactly the truth between the Russell Wilson and the Pete Carroll thing. Listen, we were over this several times about, the Tom Brady and Bill Belichick discussion. Remember how heated that conversation got and that kind of divorce? Well, Tom won a Super Bowl without Bill Belichick. Belichick has yet to win a Super Bowl post Tom Brady. But the whole narrative behind this is that Russ wanting Sean Payton in Seattle and booting Pete Carroll. And really went to John Snyder and said, it's either me or them. And so you could clearly see the writing all over the wall. Last year, Nathaniel Hackett, way over his skis. Russell Wilson looked like he had some type of injury because he's not throwing the same. He's not scrambling around and he's not opening up the pocket to distribute to all of his offensive wide receivers. That's why Denver underachieved last year. So now Pete Carroll, what happened with Seattle? They invested in Geno Smith. What happened then? You have Geno Smith, who was a comeback player of the year. Tariq Woolen, great rookie. He was outstanding in the defense. Then you had Kenneth Walker, a promising running back. And all the rest of these rookies were fantastic. And Seattle made the playoffs. Denver missed it. So it wrote the entire narrative all on the wall. You and I both recognize and will see that sometimes because it is hard decisions. We come across this in companies all the time. We are not just, for some companies, if you are very much a very productive worker, no matter what the skill is, and no matter what the department you may work for, but if you're very successful in your job, in your business, you are looked at as a reliable asset. And remember, companies, they only make sure they take care of the employees. And even if it got to a point where somebody got a promotion, somebody got terminated, somebody got let go, or they quit and they took on a new opportunity, they will find ways to replace and refill the hole. It's not that hard, and it's not exactly something where, there's animosity behind it, unless if it got to some type of serious situation. But I think Seattle, in their minds, they felt like they made the right decision of letting Russell Wilson go. They bring in Geno Smith. He's a comeback player of the year. And not only that, but a lot of players, from what I've been told, they're actually comfortable with Geno Smith. They weren't exactly comfortable with Russell Wilson. Each time players were talking about Russ, they know it's one of those deals that even if you look at Russ and you look at exactly how he carries himself. By the way, there's a narrative out that apparently he's there on the second floor in Denver. That's where all the coaches, coordinators, and a lot of different playmaking coaches are all at. First floor is all of the players. And Russ has his own office in the second floor. He's not really talking with players, not exactly building relationships with players. So that, to me, smells concerns. Because, and this is what's hard with Sean Payton now in Denver, you have to make this work. You're paying $250 million to a quarterback that we know it's a brand new ownership because it's owned by the Walmart people. And we know that there's going to be money to be made. Seats are going to fill. It's amazing to be there at Mile High in Denver. We know it's hard because of the altitude itself. But you have to make this work. That is the narrative of next season. Tim Patrick will be fully healthy. We don't know as far as what may happen with Jerry Jeudy. I anticipate he may stay. I thought he could be a real good trade asset. But again, if you're Denver, you're spending a lot of money. You are losing a little bit of draft capital. And not to mention that, you are also losing a little of the potentiality of what this defense can look like, because Enro Evero made this defense a number one defense, while the offense was last in points per game, and especially yards after catch. Lots and lots of categories where they were at their all-time lows. So what do you do then? And that's where Sean Payton's got an awful lot of work to deal with. I know for a lot of Denver fans, it's one of those things you really have to consider. You really kind of have to look at the writing on the wall. You kind of have to look at what exactly is it that we're getting involved in, because Seattle made it easy to let go of Russell Wilson, grab the picks, grab a couple of different potential players, especially Noah Fant, who's a real good tight end, and they ended up getting Kenneth Walker. They got Tariq Woolen. They got a bunch of really good young defenders, and it worked. So now how do you respond to that kind of decision-making? That is where Denver, it's not going to be as easy. We know it's not going to be one of those scenarios. It's just going to be as simple as you think it is. Sean Payton's got a lot of work, and he's got to make the offense work. If you are an offense that does not score at the very least 25-plus points a game, you are heavily criticized. I mean, there are a bunch of teams that we end up talking about that are at best mid-tier where they're scoring 20 points a game. I would think that depending on what's your injury status, are you healthy or are you kind of hitting the injury bug? Or is there inconsistency when it comes to the play call? Sometimes that does happen with offense coordinators. We see teams do this all the time. But I thought it was just interesting of that narrative because now you kind of see a little bit of an other side of Russell Wilson. You don't really see the same player, especially when you're looking at right in front of you and you're only hearing what you want to hear. So that's my knock on it. That's my even 2 cents. So I thought it was just interesting. I thought it was one that was worth talking about because this is high expectations for Russell Wilson to not underachieve. They underachieve again. That is one way to blow off $250 million on a quarterback that just does not have it anymore. All right. So of course there's talks, and we've talked about, cap situations, but I do want to talk about the LA Rams because there are narratives that are coming out that the LA Rams, they are ready to part ways with Jalen Ramsey, but they are definitely looking for draft picks in a trade. So we know the Rams took a big-time step back. We know that for sure. Matt Stafford was shut down for the year. In comes Baker Mayfield, and his signing stock is much better. He could be a bridge quarterback in 2 years. That's what I would look at. And I thought it was great because Sean McVay, offensive-minded coach, really knows how to work with his system. The other part is that a bunch of offensive guys, Cooper Kupp was shut down for the year. Allen Robinson, there was a lot of inconsistencies. He's got shut down for the year. So you had a bunch of youngsters. So you had Tutu Atwell, who I think is a bust of a pick. And not only that, defense was a little bit rippled. So in this division in the NFC West, the Cardinals are a complete mess because they got to get Kyler Murray to produce. They got to get him to work. They're going to possibly end up trading away DeAndre Hopkins. I would do that to get more draft picks because this wide receiving group is young. It's really, really fascinating to watch. And not only that, but the Cardinals know that they have a huge task amongst them. And Jonathan Gannon, new defensive-minded head coach, interesting to see what that looks like. We came off a young coach like Cliff Kingsbury, and he did not produce. Didn't really accomplish anything. Didn't accomplish in Arizona. Didn't even accomplish much in Texas Tech. And you had Patrick Mahomes. And you had Kyler Murray. You couldn't do jack squat. That was one of the things that was hard for Cliff Kingsbury. But on the other side of things, Seattle's anticipating to where they can be very, very competitive in this division because Pete Carroll, smart head coach, very, very moving when it comes to the youth movement, and guys were producing draft picks, all of them. It was great for Seattle. And San Francisco, they had a quarterback at one point before the injury bug started to take out almost every single one of them. Now they're without a quarterback. Now, how do you end up fixing that mess? Do you still trust in Trey Lance, or do you maybe roll the dice on Brock Purdy? I think he's a good kid, but there are several things you could see with San Francisco that kind of, in some ways, could potentially be a liability if they can't get it right on the offense. Defensively, I love it. So the thing about the Rams is the Rams are trying to take advantage of the open window opportunity where they can continue to be competitive. I love Matthew Stafford. I think he's a real good quarterback. He's very accurate. He throws the deep ball, won the Super Bowl with them, and it made things work. And not only that, but Allen Robinson, they spent money to play next to Cooper Kupp, and also you had Van Jefferson and a bunch of other good younger receivers. So you have to make Allen Robinson work. It didn't seem like he really meshed in with the play scheme, so maybe there's a good chance next year could be different. But the Rams know they've got to have a lot of talks on offense. Plus, the offensive line, they have absolutely missed it since Andrew Whitworth retired. They lost Roger Saffold. They've lost a bunch of guys on that front line. So there hardly has been protection up front. So that is where they really have to address that. And plus, they just recently ended up releasing linebacker Bobby Wagner. He's going to probably go to a playoff potential team that we know has great chemistry. They've got a lot of really good stuff to look forward to. So that's what I anticipate Bobby Wagner to go to. But as far as everybody else, it's a real good defense. You may have one more year out of Aaron Donald before he honestly puts up the cleats. That's what I'm looking at. Jalen Ramsey, we know, is an expensive piece. He produces, and I think you could really get 2 first-round draft picks, maybe a first, maybe a third, and maybe a fifth, if you're lucky enough. But I think it's come to that point where you really have to come to that conclusion of you need first-round draft picks. The Rams in back-to-back-to-back years have not had first-round draft picks. They bought in a bunch of superstar players. Some of them have been really good. They won a Super Bowl behind it. And some, they fell short. But we know the Rams are very competitive in Los Angeles. And we know they're competitive in their own division. I mean, they're going to be taking advantage of a division that, one, is a complete and utter chaotic mess. Another, it's a lot of young kids, but they still managed to make the playoffs, and their coach is that damn good. And then one, great defense, offensive pieces I really, really love, but question mark at quarterback. Obviously, Jimmy Garoppolo's not coming back. He's going to end up taking a contract elsewhere. And we all know, and again, you really think it's easy to move off of Jimmy Garoppolo because he's a competitor, because he's a guy's guy, because he's somebody that really does know how to work an offense. So this I kind of anticipate with the Rams this next year, and especially from what we see on the up and coming in the up and coming offseason and free agency, it's going to be nuts. It's going to be absolutely nuts. So, like, I look at the Rams and I look at everybody in the NFC, and there is a lot that you could literally love and like and really enjoy, because a lot of these guys on this offense, they got to produce. They're going to be really, really good, and you're going to get everybody back healthy, and they will very much be competitive in this division. So that's what I look at. I'm all for it, and I think the Rams, they know that they need to do it. It's an honest conversation they have to have with themselves, but I think they could absolutely do it. Good stuff. So I'm gonna break this out, because this is just pure insanity. It is amazing that, and again, this is what a no salary cap league does to you, but this is beyond insane. So I was talking with Javier Reyes a couple about it. I think it was a weekend ago, and he talks about a lot about the Padres, and we talked about this situation with Manny Machado. So here's what I'm getting right now: the Padres and Manny Machado are finalizing an 11-year, $350 million extension. Oh my God. What a deal. God, these guys are just absolutely money hungry. So how is all that money generated in San Diego? I cannot believe it. Wow. That is unbelievable. $350 million extension for 11 years with the Padres. And they're already paying top dollar money to Fernando Tatis Jr. They're already paying a lot of top dollar money. Now, they got rid of Eric Hosmer. They got rid of Will Myers. They got rid of a bunch of players. They paid top dollars to Xander Bogaerts. You still got Juan Soto right now, which you're lucky he hasn't even hit a massive contract extension. But this is expensive, though. Oh, my God. What a change. Unbelievable. And again, and again, Manny Machado's a good player. Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I think he's a good player. But I also do think that there's some things I'm kind of like, Manny's being Manny. But either way, it's a real good promising deal. We know the Padres were questionable about it. Now it looks as though they're getting a deal done. Absolutely outrageous if you ask me, but this is why we don't have a salary cap in Major League Baseball. So now he's getting more than what he originally had on a 10-year, $300 million contract. He's getting $50 million more guaranteed for 11 years. So good luck. I mean, hey, you can only get so much of the production as you can get right now, but this will be really, really interesting. All right, folks. Well, as we've said before, Snake Sports Talk Show, we've got SeatGeek, proud sponsor of the show, now with affordable prices for your next event, whatever it may be. We know ticket prices are absolutely atrocious. Thanks a lot, inflation. But you can find affordable seats online at SeatGeek.com for your next sporting event, live concert, shows, stand-up comedies, and more, just by going to SeatGeek.com. But before you go to checkout, use promo code SNAKESPORTS, and that gives you $20 off of your first purchase. When you go online, SeatGeek.com, promo code SNAKESPORTS. That's SNAKESPORTS as the promo code. SeatGeek.com, promo code SNAKESPORTS.
Never stop, I'll get it if I want it. Gotta make to myself a promise. I won't quit, keep going till I got it. I won't give up till I'm on top.
Yo,
yeah.
no, I ain't the type to give up. If I do something, man, I do it till I get what I want. I turn a business out of nothing into something I love. I got a poker face, but honestly, I'm not one to bluff. I flip a switch, never miss, man, I always stay up. Don't let them see you, bitch, always have a plan to stay tough. This life ahead of you ain't easy, it was built to be rough. But that's what makes a personality, is tragedy, bruh. So keep your head on your shoulders. Now we ain't out here moving rocks, we out here moving.
All right, folks. We know prices are getting absolutely hectic thanks a lot to inflation, but it doesn't have to feel that way when you're looking for your next affordable seat for your next up-and-coming sport event, live concert, and more just by going online to SeatGeek.com, entering the promo code SNAKESPORTS. That's SeatGeek.com. Snake Sports promo code, $20 off of your net first purchase. Boy, I got to end up recovering from what I just literally saw from Jess Passan, really breaking out the news. Manny Machado, what in the hell is going on with a lot of this stuff? Like, I love it that baseball season's right around the corner, and I just love a lot of these narratives, but it's going to be interesting. Rule changes, so much of it. So, all right, joining us live here on the show covers everything Boston Red Sox, and of course, we know there's a lot to talk about of what's happening up in Boston. Interesting what to look at with the AL East. So joining me live via the Global Satellite Network presented by StreamYard, Lauren Willand. So, okay, before we start with the Red Sox, let's get your thoughts. Manny Machado, 11 years, $350 million. Look, I am appalled that the Padres would even pay this much money. I did not see this team do this. Like, after, okay, Fernando Tatis Jr., Juan Soto, Xander Bogaerts. Now Manny is just asking for more money. I myself personally, I have my thoughts about Manny Machado, and I'm like, good luck with that in the first 5 years of this deal. What was your thoughts on this? Because I'm like, this is a great opportunity because there's no salary cap, there's nothing, but this has to be World Series or bust at this point, right?
It has to be. And my first thought is, how do I get signed with the Padres? Because they're just printing money over there. I would not mind if they want to write me a fat check for $350 million. But, I mean, good for them. Good for them for, Machado being like, I'm opting out. And they're like, hell you are. We're going to keep you here. But the only thing is, this team will probably be great for the next 5 years. And those multi-year deals are just toward the end of them, the back half of them. It's, good luck to them. I hope it works out. But they're going to have 3 guys over the age of 40 in the next 10 years and an expiring end of those deals. So, but yeah, it's World Series or bust, and hopefully they can do it. I mean, they have the talent. It's just a matter of can they actually execute it now?
Yeah, you got to make stuff like this really consistent. I know they dumped off a lot of talent when they got rid of Eric Hosmer, Will Myers, and a bunch of others. So they made some sacrifices in the middle of it. But, I mean, I had Javier Reyes on this show before, and I was like, look, I remember watching this team when they had Carlos Quentin, they had Chris Denorfia, Alexi Amarista, no namers. Now they're here with all these superstars. It's insanity to me. But I do want to talk about this. So spring training's gone on the great foot. Most people might not think so because of just the implemented rule changes. I'll start with this. The pitch count, I'm actually liking it because there is parts of it where there's pressure on both sides, the pitcher and the batter. One, you can't step out of the box for very long. I think if you're smart enough, even taking just one step without completely taking yourself out could really help more of your potential to keep the offense alive. The other part is, pitching-wise, if you're already knowing with the communication between you and the catcher what you're throwing, then you're going to be dealing some great games, at least 6 to about 7 innings at least for starting pitching. So how did you really evaluate these rule changes? Because I think this is great. The fact that games were 2.5 hours long. I mean, I'm not going to sit there on a Tuesday night knowing I got work early in the morning for 3+ hours, and it's dreadful. Kids got to go to school, everything else that's in between. What did you think of these new implemented rules?
So I love the pitch clock. We saw it a lot last year. The minors adopted it last year. So we saw that it worked. The games were very, very quick. They were efficient. And it's still just as competitive as it is without the pitch clock. It does add a bit more strategy now on both sides, like you had mentioned. And I genuinely enjoyed the pitch clock because maybe I'm scarred from the 2020 Red Sox season and even last year when it was just 4+ hour games of misery. Yep. And so much of those games just being like, oh my God, please, mercy rule, I'm begging. So it does add up. It does, speed up the game quite a bit. We saw the last Red Sox spring training game on Friday or Saturday,
Mm-hmm.
was 2 hours and 40 minutes. So it's working. And like I said, I enjoy it. It's not always going to be perfect. I think the Rocky spring training game yesterday was 4 hours still. So, I mean, but Red Sox fans dealt with Dice K and Erod, who were just slow pitchers. And it speeds it up. And I understand, pitchers and batters both have their routines and they like to do what they do. Just got to do it a little faster now.
Oh, I even think about the times when Tim Wakefield would be throwing those knuckleballs every time when I would see him. And it's like, it's taken so much time away. And it's like, you could utilize that time to just be putting up runs on the board. So it's like, it is going to be interesting. I know it's not an unexpected, but it's one of those changes that needs to happen. I know people are kind of backlashing, but look, they'll get over themselves. If they're going to be drinking their beer and they're going to be out there in the ball, that's the funny thing. If they're the same people who are arguing about these changes and I'm coming across them in the ballpark, I don't want to hear it. I'm like, come on, like let's be real and let's be innovative for once. I looked at it too and talking about the rule change. So I do like the fact that they're implementing that ghost runner in second base in the regular season. I'd rather it be that than the postseason because we watch this same similar style in hockey because you get 5 minutes overtime. If you can't get a winner from there, you go into shootouts until somebody buries it behind the net. At least with the ghost runner, this is going to start to implement guys to start hitting right center field. I have not seen that from a lot of these batters now because many of them are making multi-million-dollar, money, and they're just wanting to hit the homers. They want to hit the long ball. So how do you see this ghost runner thing really panning out? Because I think this is great because it also helps with this pitch clock, and it would help when we go into extra innings and determining who the victor will be.
I feel like a hypocrite because I hate this rule, and I don't, obviously with the postseason, I'm glad it's not, but I don't know why I hate it because I'm for the speeding up of the games a little bit, but I know you said the right center field thing. I like that it's going to add extra strategy to how you're going to get that runner across home. How are you going to move the runner? Are you going to stop trying to just swing for the fences? Are you going to try to put the ball in play? And that comes too with the banning of the shift. How are they, how is everyone kind of going to adjust to that as well? When, somebody always hits the first, if you're not shifting, appropriately or how you can, it's going to be that. I mean, that's going to be interesting too, but I think that it's going to add a lot more strategy as much as I hate it. And it can go just as back and forth. I mean, the game can still go 14, 15, 16 innings. If they keep, they find the right strategy, they're going to get those runs across. But I've never been a fan of this rule, but I'm just going to have to suck it up because it's here to stay.
Yeah, absolutely. I know it's kind of a tough rule at first. I was a little hesitant at the rule at first because I thought if this is something implemented into postseason baseball, I'd be pissed because I'm like, first of all, postseason's meant to be pressurizing. It's championship or nothing. So I'd rather it be very pressurizing than it being something that's easy for teams to first of all, could you imagine that if we had this and then the Marlins are in the World Series because of this?
Right.
Like we would be ripping our hairs out trying to come up with a really impressive article of what the hell did what just happened. So, but I like this for the regular season because at least it's really finishing up a lot of games. It's not perfect, but it's working its way to where it's improving. And I hate to bring up bad memories, but the fact that with this banning shift, I'm like, okay, good luck with this because a lot of those shifts is because it's adding more pressure to lefties. I hate to bring up memories, but the time when Robinson Cano was smart enough to throw a bunt down third base line, there's an easy base. Just take the easy base. I don't care what my agent has to tell me or any of this. Take the base because if you want to be the best player in baseball, these are small things you really have to revert back to. So I'm like, okay, you're going to ban away the shift. That's fine. But still, I would be putting pressure to basically say, figure me out, because it's just it's giving you an easy A on the test without even trying or challenging yourself to actually ace it yourself. So the Red Sox, this is really an interesting year for them. So they moved on from JD Martinez. We know beforehand They moved off of a lot of real good core pieces. Andrew Benintendi, Mookie Betts, several other pieces. I know, and I've spoke with somebody who's big in Boston, who's got a lot of real good people as well within. And a lot of this chatter and talk, I mean, there is a lot of skepticism with the general managing. How is the Red Sox really going to deal with themselves with this division? Because it's going to be tough. I mean, the Rays are always bringing in ace pitching. Yankees, they're spending all this money in the world. Can they really win a championship? I don't know. And then you've got the youngsters of the Toronto Blue Jays. So how do you really evaluate the Red Sox season this upcoming year?
This is a big season for them. I mean, this is a chance to kind of maybe form a new identity, and maybe that's going to be hard with a lot of people are calling this a bridge year with the newcomers and the 1-year deal and with all the farm prospects that could be in the majors next 2 or 3 years. So it's a big season for them. And I think that this offseason, they made the right moves, like in a sense where they filled the holes that they needed to fill. I would have loved this team 5 years ago. These moves would have been sick 5 years ago. Like Justin Turner, Adam Duvall, but a lot has to go right for the Red Sox because there is a lot of potential there. They do have good players. They do have good talent. It's just a matter of can it all come together, because it just did not come together at all in 2022 for whatever reason. I mean, they were talented on paper. They should have been a postseason contender, and they just weren't. They fell apart. They just never seemed like they were on the same page. So I think that the teams around them got better 100%. They got stronger. They filled their holes. The Yankees signed their star player to a long-term contract. What's it like? So it's a really good season for them to get a new identity, to kind of, silence the haters, because there's a lot of, like you said, skepticism. There's a lot of pessimism and just uneasy thoughts around this team, because it's looking like it could be 2022 all over again. It's looking like another last place finish. And it just comes down to, does ownership, does Chaim Bloom really care about this team and giving the fans a solid product to put on the field? Fans are always going to go to Fenway Park. That's out of the question.
Yeah.
People are always going to go. They're going to watch baseball, but do you want to see Fenway filled most of the time? And last year, I mean, I walked into Fenway Park. They were so far out of it at this point, but I walked into Fenway Park for $4 and sat behind home plate, and it was just very bizarre feeling of not having a filled park. So it's a really good time to kind of get the fans back in it, get that new identity, show them that this chemistry is just as good as it's been showing throughout spring training. And it's going to be hard, though. They know AL East is always tough. And when 3 of the teams that you had real big trouble with last year get better, it just makes me think, is it going to be the same? Because it's, like I said, a lot has to go right. The potential is there. I don't know if it's going to happen.
Yeah, it's hard to really evaluate it because of the fact of it's changing so much from what we've seen 5 years ago and to what we're seeing now. I mean, hell, over 100 years of tradition in Fenway Park, I would not be missing a ball game out in that beautiful stadium itself. I mean, there's so much tradition behind it and so many great memories in that ballpark, and it's just it's a thrill. But yes, it does send a message, and it's a rippling effect of, you as the ownership really have to do something about this, because us as the fan base, we're not going to see this team underachieve. We're not going to see them not be competitive, especially night in and night out. So that's where I was like, when they started making these changes of a lot of players, I know what they were trying to do, even getting draft picks, even getting some kind of, incentive. But at the same time, you're getting a lot of these promising guys like Bobby Dahlbeck. You got to get a lot of these young guys to start going now. So here's the interesting part. So Xander Bogaerts, he's parted ways. He's now in San Diego. And luckily, and I was happy of the fact Boston did this, but they re-signed Rafael Devers to a long-term deal. I said, I would rather invest my money in Devers because, first of all, who else on that third base market are you really trusting to be shut down on that hot corner? So he's young. You're going to get production out of him. And I think this keeps the heartbeat with the Red Sox. Is there something else, too, that the Red Sox may have in place to really kind of add to what Devers really does make for this team?
Yeah, I mean, I felt like they had no choice but to sign Devers to that long-term extension after
Yeah.
the outrage of losing Bogarts. And, he's all of a sudden the face of this franchise, and he will be for the next 10 years. You have Kike Hernandez, who's this big personality, who's really emerged as kind of a clubhouse leader and somebody who wants the most out of his teammates. But then you kind of look toward the future. Everyone's banking on Marcelo Meyer to be the shortstop of the Red Sox franchise for the next X amount of years when he gets to MLB level.
Mhm.
So I think that he has the chance to really come in, and there's so much pressure on him, and he probably knows that. You lose Bogarts, and all eyes all of a sudden shift to him. Like, oh, okay, we Red Sox fans figured it out where they're like, Story's here to be the shortstop because they're not going to sign Bogarts, and now it's all eyes on Meyer because they know Story is getting quote unquote older. He has the elbow issue now, the elbow surgery. Who knows how it's going to bounce back? And Meyer could be ready in the next 2 years. So he does have the chance to really be kind of like the next, not the next Devers, but he can be a good tandem with Devers. And I think he's got the probably the biggest potential to be kind of not necessarily the face of the franchise, but another type of leader and I have no idea if he's a vocal leader, if he's just kind of a lead by example, like Patrice Bergeron with the Bruins. I'm not sure. He's so young too. He's hasn't even played in AA or AAA or anything. So there is a ways to go, but if he continues on this path where he's just constantly, he's seeing the ball well, he's continuing to build his game, he has the chance to kind of be the next tandem with Devers, and hopefully the fans can love it just as much as they love Devers and Bogarts.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's going to be something that I know Red Sox fans, they have to be excited for. And the fact that, if all things really do go well with this young core and with this group, that they start to produce on all levels, then it may be a fighting chance that Boston could be competitive and could be absolute fits within their own division, let alone in just the American League altogether. I wanted to pick your brain on this because here's what I thought about this before. So I think back to the Trevor Story signing. I thought it was the strangest signing because, first of all, you already had a shortstop in Xander Bogaerts for one. Now you're putting Trevor Story at second. And you know what this led back to? This led back to the time when they had Yohan Moncada. And I thought of this. If Boston was patient enough, knowing that, first of all, I know it's hard because Dustin Pedroia is a longtime veteran, and he was going to retire a Red Sox. But if they were patient enough through this process, Moncada would have been exactly that starting second baseman, and maybe they would have saved themselves a little bit. But how did you kind of see this Trevor Story thing really working out on the first of the signing?
Yeah, it was weird because it was a later signing. Then he got right to spring training. His wife had a baby, and then he got food poisoning. So it was a very just from the second he signed to the first time he could actually play, it was just bizarre. And I was like, the Red Sox don't need a shortstop. They could use a second baseman, of course, but in a pinch, you do have Kike Hernandez, but he's just so good in center field. You don't want to take him out. Obviously not the case this year, but when I first saw it, I wasn't too concerned about the shortstop position because I was like, everyone's complaining about his arm and that velocity and can he reach shortstop to first base? People from Colorado were talking about that even before he left the Rockies. So I was like, all right, he's going to be the second baseman. It's fine. They're going to have a great infield of Casas, Story, Bogarts, Devers, and obviously it's not going to happen. But I thought the whole thing around it was bizarre because he wasn't even on the Red Sox radar. Like there was no reports of like, oh, they're close to a deal, and all of a sudden it's boom, Trevor Story is coming to the Red Sox. And like I said earlier, fans were like, we know why he's here. We're like, we're not stupid. He's going to be the shortstop, and that was the plan until he got injured. So it was, I personally, maybe I'm just blind to it. I was like, no, he'll be the second baseman. That keeps Kike in center field. It's a perfect plan. And it also keeps Bogarts here. Very wrong. And if you told me this last year, I'd be like, no, it's going to happen. Everything's going to fall into place. And it's completely crumbled. And I think the signing itself will work out. I know that's 6 years, $140 million. It's a lot of money to commit to somebody. Of course, that was like Chaim Bloom's biggest contract at the time. Mm-hmm. But I think it's going to work out for the long run. I just think it hasn't really started on the right foot. And it's never good when you sign someone, you're like, oh, this is Bogart's replacement. Like, that's not why he's here. Like, he did not sign with Boston to be Bogart's replacement. He signed because he got the money that he wanted. So I think it'll work out. It's not a good start to, obviously this season, and last season he dealt with injuries too, but we still got 5 more years of it. So still got time for it to work out.
Yeah, I agree. And like I said, I thought the same thing. I thought it was a very strange signing, but once all the writing was on the wall, I was like, okay, I understand why that this even happened in the first place. And again, I mean, I know dating back from Colorado, Coors Field is a hitter's friendly ballpark. It sucks for pitchers out there, but it's hard enough because the ownership in Colorado, we know this, they don't really manage themselves when it comes to financials and payrolls very well with a lot of their star players. We saw this with Nolan Arenado. We're probably going to see this with Charlie Blackmon because I think he might be a trade piece if he goes somewhere, and he'll be very competitive. But it'll be interesting, and hopefully we do see a bounce back year from Trevor Story this year. So here's what I love about this year. So we finished up last year with the World Cup. This year, we're now in World Baseball Classic mode. And we know I love this time of year because every 4 years, you always get talent somewhere internationally. And I thought this year is jam-packed. We got new teams with Great Britain, with a lot of different, young kids, young teams. So, and I've said, U.S., Dominican Republic, and potentially, Puerto Rico and some teams. I don't know, too, though, if Venezuela might be that. I mean, they may look great on paper with their lineup, but the pitching staff I'm questionable about. How exciting is this to have the World Baseball Classic back again? But this is super stacked. I mean, the U.S., they know there's going to have a lot of competition in front of them, but how do you kind of see this year?
Yeah, I'm glad it's back. It's so fun. And it's a way for baseball fans to see so much of baseball's best talent all right there in front of you. You don't have to wait for a team to come play your team. It's so much fun, and the talent is just unreal. If I was in the baseball classic, World Baseball Classic, and I saw my team was going to face the Dominican Republic, I would just fly home. I'd be like, no way. This team is unbelievably stacked. Like, I mean, you said on paper, Venezuela too. They look very good. The pitching is concerned. It's like the Red Sox last year. They look stacked on paper. So you never know what can happen. It's such a fun tournament. The players are out there representing their home countries. They get to be, the representative of that country that gave them so much. So it's so much fun for the players. It's so much fun for the fans, and I'm excited to watch it. I think this is the DR's tournament to lose. They're so good top to bottom.
Oh yeah, and it reminds me a lot about the 2013 season when Dominican Republic went undefeated and went all in, and they were like, I mean, Hanley Ramirez, a lot of these stacked players, like we enjoyed watching them in their prime, and they were just great ball players all the way around. And international pool play, like that really boosts up the confidence for Major League Baseball, especially finding all those talents, kids that are like young and like, even if you find a kid who's playing in Cuba at 17 years old and he's playing amongst 25, 26-year-olds, even older. And it's just so fun to watch. But my one thing I wanted off topic is because this is going to be Miguel Cabrera's last year. We know this for sure. Last time playing in the World Baseball Classic, representing for Venezuela. How do we kind of see this playing out? I think this will be a very, very happy moment for him and for the country. I'm rooting all in for him. How do you kind of see this playing out with this last year?
Yeah, very, very happy, very emotional. And it's so weird. It's like the end of an era, right? We saw Albert Pujols last year and how emotional that was. And I'm excited to see if he's going to go all out and just completely just like tear the cover off the ball, play the best baseball he's ever played, both in the World Baseball Classic and just kind of have fun with it. Especially if going in, it's your last time doing something, you're going out on your own terms. I think we're going to see the best kind of baseball that he's played in a long, long time. It's going to be weird. This is somebody I grew up watching and grew up constantly being in the headlines and terrorizing my own baseball team. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I think that, just not just, his fans, but fans throughout baseball will really take it in and almost kind of not take it for granted because again, end of an era. It's going to be very, very weird when he's not playing baseball anymore.
Yeah, and especially watching the times when he would win the Triple Crown, and he was a guy that would he sprayed the baseball all over the diamond, and he was just an absolute fun watch. Even as a young kid in winning a World Series at 19, like, it was insane. And so really happy for him in his career. And you know, it's funny, it brings me back to a really, really nice throwback. But there was a video I saw where there was A-Rod and Ken Griffey Jr. They all took on a minor league team on a home run derby, and just so happens they got their asses handed to by a 19-year-old named best David Ortiz. And a guy that really, you know, in his last year, I was like, are we sure this is his last year? He's producing that much that I'm like, I might give him maybe 1 or 2 years, but it is so good. But I do want to say, side note, I hope they do this better, though, because I watched Albert Pujols. Why the hell am I watching him on Apple TV? Why is it not on Fox? Why is it not on some of these major networks? Like, this is a big thing. All of us, even for my generation, I watched him as a rookie, and I watched him as how great he was. He was so influential to this game. So I hope they do the same for Miguel Cabrera. I hope this is better, and, you know, they go all out on this because it's respectful for some of these generational players. But I appreciate the time, Lauren. Thank you so much. How can people find you to find everything of those Boston Red Sox?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter, Lauren, 3 Laws, Lauren with 4 R's. All of my written work on NESN.com. A lot of Bruin stuff right now, but there's plenty of Red Sox content out there on NESN.com as well. And then hosting the Locked On Red Sox podcast Monday through Friday. We're going to record a new episode today about this pitch clock drama that people seem to be really mad at. So Monday through Friday, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts is where we are.
There you go, folks. And I will tell you, though, I'm really interested to seeing how that Dmitry Orlov trade is really going to work out for Boston, because they've played great. I think Linus Ullmark was a diamond in the rough out of Buffalo, he is just playing out of his mind right now. And me and my buddy of mine, he's big on Boston. He's actually covers Boston everything, and he's also close with the Patriots organization. So he tells me all the time, he's like, I'm flying out to Vegas because Boston and Vegas are probably going to end up matching up. I said, look, I don't know. I'm kind of like, look, we're streaky right now, but if it's a possibility, I'd love to see it. But trade deadline March 3rd. Real quick side note, how do you kind of see this panning out? Are the Bruins done yet?
I think they're done, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's a smaller move like they made on Saturday when they traded Keith Kincaid for Shane Bowers, where he won't make an impact right now, like Hathaway and Orlov will. But I think if there's one more smaller move like that, they'll probably want to get rid of Mike Riley's contract if they can. But I think they're done, and I think that's okay, because now they have to scratch good players for other good players. It's a great problem to have, especially going to the playoffs. So I think they're done, but you never know with Don Sweeney, because he is a trade deadline guru.
Yeah, and of course, this is potentially one final ride with that 3, and so hopefully we'll see what happens. But I mean, all hopes are going out to the Bruins right now to seeing their favorites. So it'll be interesting to see for the rest of the season into the NHL playoffs. Thank you so much, Lauren. Appreciate your time. Have a great rest of your weekend, and good luck with the Red Sox, and especially watching all those spring training games.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It was a blast.
Absolutely. All right, Lauren Willand from NESN, and of course covering the Boston Red Sox. Great find, by the way. And here's what I say too. I know we got hour 2 coming up next. We got Garrett Bush that's going to be joining me, Locked On Browns. I'm really curious to seeing how the rest of the season will really pan out for the Bruins. And it's crazy. That Dmitry Orlov trade was great. I thought it was fantastic. But I will say, the Red Sox, it was weird at that time. But, they got to make, they hope that there's a bounce back year for Trevor Story. I hope there is. And, it'll be a good cause for, the Boston Red Sox moving forward. But let's just say, women in sports are just killing it right now. The fact that every single one of them, and very knowledgeable, this is why I'm like, I am all for it. I don't care what anybody really, really says. I love it. I think this is a great movement, and it works. And I hope we produce a lot more very knowledgeable women within the sports realm, analyzing, giving their analysis and their sports expertise. It's fantastic. We need more of it. I'm very innovative person, and I love this kind of stuff. All right, hour number 2 coming up live in Las Vegas. This is the Snake Sports Talk Show.
Live from Las Vegas, the Snake Sports Talk Show with Jake Silva starts right now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, hour number 2. We are live in the 702. This is the Snake Sports Talk Show, wherever and however you may be watching and listening, live on all platforms, iHeartRadio, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and Instagram. Wherever you can find all your social medias, like, follow, and subscribe, and hit the bell button for all latest notifications. Lauren Willand was amazing in hour 1. Glad to have her. And that was a great find, too. A really good reporter for Nesson, which is, the Northeast. And it's a real great sports network as well, filled with great writers. And they're big on Boston. Like, they love it. So, really, really, really good find. I was very happy to, at the very least, take the time to talking with her and really kind of evaluating and picking her brain on what is going on with the Red Sox. How do we kind of see the AL East really pan out? I mean, the Yankees are spending a lot of their money, and the Bruins are just kicking ass. So really good to find a lot of sports gems out there within the sports market. It's been great. Garrett Bush joining me here in about a couple of minutes. So I will tell you, I mean, I came prepared today. Fresh, clean cut. I know I needed at least a refresher, but really, really good. I feel great. Feel absolutely fantastic. We're going to be close to closing up February and starting up March. So I'm geared up for that. So I definitely wanted to point this out. So there's a little bit of some talks, and it is interesting of what we can expect from the NHL trade deadline. So before we bring up Garrett Bush, one of my things about the NHL trade deadline, and it's been fantastic, we have seen so many big moves. Recently, Boston going and acquiring Dmitry Orlov from the Washington Capitals really fits well with this scheme that the Bruins have. And the Bruins have just been catching fire. They have been an absolutely dominant team all throughout the Eastern Conference. I see them going toe-to-toe. Obviously, with Toronto, it's not even close for the Leafs. They made all these trades. Now, this is what I will say, too, because there is a big trade. But they could go toe-to-toe with Tampa. They could go toe-to-toe with a lot of their in-division teams. But as far as the conference goes, I mean, the Rangers might give them some fits. Might be some teams that might actually give them a little bit of some competition, but they're blowing everybody out. And, I mean, compared to what's happening in the West, like in the Western Conference, there's teams that are wide open. I mean, Dallas is playing real good defense. The Golden Knights at times are streaky, but then you have, like, Minnesota's trying to figure out themselves to getting into the playoffs, and then Winnipeg, they made a trade. So there's lots that are brewing up with at least close to 20 games left of the season. But the trade deadline, March 3rd, I already have that marked on my calendar, and I'm going to have a lot of really good analysts that are going to be covering this. So it'll be interesting to see how the trade deadline goes. But recapping it, I mean, Dmitry Orlov going to Boston, big-time move. I think he's a really good quality upgrade. My other thoughts is, Ryan O'Reilly to Toronto, he's really fit himself in well, but is that the piece that will get him over the first-round hump? Because they haven't played so good in the first round, and it's been kind of terrifying. We know that for a lot of Toronto Leafs fans. the other ones, Vladimir Tarasenko has been a great fit with the Rangers. Hyper-aggressive scoring, moving out of St. Louis. And right now the Blues are just they're kind of shooting themselves in the foot right now. But there's a lot of real good potentiality. And, of course, Bo Horvat to the Islanders really, really makes a ton of sense. It makes all the sense in the world. And not only that, but there's a lot of different shakeups, because right now there's potentiality for Patrick Kane to get moved. People are anticipating that there's chances that at least Patrick Kane becomes a Ranger. Now, there's been a lot of different news scoops and so much more on that. But here's another one that was interesting. Nino Niederreiter getting traded from Nashville to Winnipeg. I think that's a good upgrade, especially when you've got to have somebody there next to Mark Scheifele and Pierre-Luc Dubois. I think the Jets really have got themselves something to keep them afloat. But Dallas, here's one. Dallas just got themselves Evgeny Dodonov. That is a real good upgrade. The Canadians are just a mess. They are an absolute atrocious mess. I love Cole Caulfield, and I do like Nick Suzuki, but they need some serious help. I don't know how that this is going to really work out for the Canadians moving forward, but Dallas, I think they really plugged in a real good player who really knows how to distribute the puck. So it'll be fun to see them. And I'm getting news now. So TSN's Pierre LeBrun, he reported there is 2 teams that are front runners on the Timo Meier sweepstakes. One we know is the New Jersey Devils. We know that for sure. And the other is the Vegas Golden Knights. I do want to explain a little bit about that. My thought on, if the Golden Knights were to get Timo Meier, then you really have to be aggressive on offense. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, because you are getting at least a youngster who scores aggressively, who has been kind of that back half for the San Jose Sharks. We know that is something that is interesting. I feel like because the Sharks, they may keep this deal away from Vegas. You know how they are when it comes to, in division, in the Pacific, how that they're really going to handle all this. But if, in fact, he is the front runner to the Golden Knights, that would be huge. And they would get themselves a really good young player. You could probably, you could give him a long-term contract as long as the money itself really does speak for it. But there is a ton of changes that really, really, really has to come into fruition for them. So, interesting. But again, Timo Meier's a big fish. And he's a guy that, at some point, because he's looking for a long-term contract. I know that for a fact. But I do think it is something that the Golden Knights need to have offense. They need to have somebody that's aggressive, because you have Mark Stone on the long-term IR. So, and maybe Timo Meier's the best fit. But we know, look at what's happening in New Jersey. Jack Hughes, he's scoring like crazy. He's really making a name for himself, and he's really arrived. The other part is, too, they've got some good players defensively, too. Remember, they got Dougie Hamilton. So it is a really good look for them. And I do think there's going to be some sacrifices. There is going to be some added changes. But if this is the case, and wherever this may be, because if that's only 2 teams there, then I know the Golden Knights have to shed the cap. They know that they made that move with Mark Stone, and they know they have to make several changes from there. But we also know New Jersey has at least a little bit of some leeway. So it's going to be quite the race. But if they could get a deal done with Timo Meier, that will be interesting. But as far as the outlooks for a lot of other trade pieces, we know Jonathan Taves, unfortunately, is off the map because of health concerns and such. But I kind of think otherwise with that. I almost feel like that there's something else that's in there that the Blackhawks really just don't want to. They just don't want to end up, revealing out. And we know the Blackhawks have been the talk, in the last several days because they needed to get rid of a lot of their core players because it's not working for them anymore. It's not the same similar team as it was when they won the Cup in 10, 13, and 15. We know that. But it is one of those concerns I've said over and over again. You kind of have to play, you kind of have to play a little of that hardball. But the Blackhawks really have to look at their young core. They have to. So interesting stuff, but Patrick Kane, we know it'll be interesting because if a lot of people are already seeing that, the Rangers, they are the front runners to get Patrick Kane. We know that, but again, anything could change at that point. So, all right. So shifting on to the NFL, because we know that the offseason and free agency March 15th is going to be exciting and interesting. But for one team in particular, because the AFC North, it's going to have a lot of changes. And to discuss that with me, Garrett Bush, Locked On Browns, joining me live. So, okay. This was an interesting season for the Browns this past season because of the fact. So let's start with the narrative. So first of all, I love their defensive pieces. I do love John Johnson. I do love Myles Garrett. Now we know Jadeveon Clowney. He's already made that move. He's like, I'm out of here. But they've got some good pieces. And I do love their offensive front with their O-line. I think it's spectacular. Even if you got a second, third rounder there on that front line, they are great. But Deshaun Watson, we know this was a hard season to start with because he was suspended for 11, 12 games, and it was going to be hard for him to come back after taking a year off of football. How do you anticipate what next season and the expectations are for this team? Because this is kind of the one where I don't think a lot of the smoke is on Kevin Stefanski. I think this narrative's way blown out of proportion. I think he's fine. He works. How do you kind of see this with the Cleveland Browns with the offseason and going into next year?
Well, I think for this year, the Browns are all in. When you give Deshaun Watson, and I'm not so bearish on the contract. The Browns have been in a position over the last 20 years where we've swung and missed. We've tried to draft quarterbacks that are old, like Brandon Weeden. We tried to take spark plugs like Johnny Manziel. We tried to take guys like Deshaun Kaiser who have upside, and we've taken a quarterback every color, shape, hue there is to get, and they didn't work. So I don't begrudge Jimmy Haslam for just saying, look, we're going to have to just go out here and get a guy because these type of guys don't come available on the market. So he rolled the dice, and we'll see how it works. Now, as far as what he did last year, Deshaun Watson played the 6 games. There were a couple times where you say, okay, I see what I see it, right? I see, some of the talent. I see some of the throws that he could make. Was it something that was overwhelming that moved any of the Browns fans? No. Because we were used to seeing everyone, when they make the trade, everybody goes to YouTube. So you just go right to YouTube, check the highlights out there. Like, well, hold on. Houston Texans, he was throwing the ball all over the place. We didn't see that in Cleveland. So when you don't see that, the alarm, there's a little bit of a worry that just grows slowly but surely in the bottom of your stomach, saying, hey, is this us again? Did we get fooled again? Did we get the wrong guy again? So when I look at Kevin Stefanski, right? Kevin Stefanski, to me, I thought Kevin Stefanski should have did himself a favor. I thought he should have got rid of Joe Woods during the season. I think if you would have got rid of Joe Woods during the season, you have a natural progression to say, hey, I went into the season thinking we were going to be able to do certain things. I was really involved with Jacoby Brissett, who played over his head. Look at how the offense performed. But our defense was not up to snuff. Our defense was giving up the most rushing yards historically bad on the ground. So if you would have got rid of him during the season, you would have came into this season with a little more optimism, because you would have said, hey, last year was the defense. Good. We'll give him a mulligan for that. Let's go get Deshaun Watson ready to go. But when you kept him on and you lost that many games, then you got rid of him at the end of the season. It's almost as if it warmed your hot seat up, because now the common denominator left. You could blame a couple people. Odell's gone. Jarvis is gone. Baker Mayfield is gone. Joe Woods is out of here. Now it's come down to you and Deshaun Watson. So those will be the guys who will be under the most pressure coming up this season.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely have to exceed, especially in this division with the AFC North. I mean, first of all, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they're getting a break because they're not paying Kenny Pickett anything, and they kind of found their guy, so they can work on offensive line, they can work on a bunch of pieces. So it is interesting with the Browns, and this is where I was like, I knew this was a hard season, because first of all, you're not going to expect Deshaun Watson to go and put 6 games in, and he's just that great. It's not possible. So to me, I think it was a rough season that they know they had to throw in the back burner, and then going into OTAs, going into camp, you know that there's going to be a lot on the line for him. And I think working with this offense, first of all, Nick Chubb's amazing. He's never sold himself short. Now, how do you really outlook this offense? Now, I know there's a time window with this offensive line that they could produce. They can give you some open holes for the run game and give you protection for Deshaun Watson. Is there more that you kind of anticipate the Browns they really have to evaluate forward? Because I do like the Amari Cooper move, and I do think he works well, but is there a little more that's in the cards? Because we know Kareem Hunt's a free agent. We know that there were several holes that were in there, and we know David Njoku. He's obviously got to be the producing tight end. What do you kind of see with this offense moving forward?
Well, they're gonna have to revamp things. I joke and say it all the time on the radio. I'm like, hey, they got about 6 games to figure this out. And for them to get this first 6 games of the first year, they're gonna have to. I don't care if they got to live together, go fishing, hunting, camping. Him and Kevin Stefanski, Deshaun Watson should be tied at the hip, going shopping together, getting haircuts together. Whatever you got to do to be in lockstep, because they're going to have to change the way the offense really, really generates points, and they have to rethink their philosophy. When we go out, and here's the thing about, in looking at the AFC as well as the rest of the big picture in that division. So we want to get to the Super Bowl. That's the main point. For so long, the Browns are like, oh, we want to be competitive. Oh, we want to win the North. No, we want to win the Super Bowl. That's the objective. And if that's your objective, you have to look around the landscape of the AFC and say, you're probably going to have to beat 2 out of these 3 teams: the Chiefs, the Bills, and the Bengals. So when you look at your offense, you no longer can say, okay, I'm just putting together to be the best I can be. You have to put something on the field that can compete with those teams. And we already know what it is with Patrick Mahomes. I mean, this guy, it doesn't even matter. Like, if he gets the ball and there's any time on the clock, you're losing. Joe Burrows has been huge and been in the AFC Championship game multiple times now. Josh Allen has been, a spectacular. But you still got Herbert. You still got people want to bury Lamar Jackson.
Yeah. If he's winning 70-80% of your games, I'm not burying him very far in the ground.
Yeah, no, he's still lurking around. So for me, I think the Browns need to do a couple things here. Nick Chubb is great. Nick Chubb is. I thought he should have got the ball more last year. People will say, hey, he got 1,500 yards. How many more yards you want to get? Hey, he ain't getting enough. So you look at that. I love Amari Cooper, but you need one more guy. You need another receiver. Whether names like Jerry Jeudy have been tossed around for Denver. I don't know if Sean Payton's going to give him up. Names like Brandon Cooks and DeAndre Hopkins, guys that used to play with Deshaun Watson. I'm not sure if they want to bring in Brandon Cooks for that type of money. DeAndre Hopkins is going to take some draft capital to go get him from the Arizona Cardinals. And on top of that, you don't even really know whether or not they're going to pitch him. They're not. Their names are not even huge on the trade block. So I don't know if those are going to do. You got names like Robert Woods that are free agents, guys that could be coming along that are just, journeyman guys or whatever that can help you out. But I still think they need a deep receiver, a guy that can get vertical. And I think that they need to really evolve the playbook and take lots more shots downfield. I think when you watch the Cleveland Browns offense, it feels like they're in a phone booth sometimes. They're like, good gracious, they're just so congested. Like, come on, man. So
and it's
go ahead.
Yeah, and it's funny because I'm like, you bring up great points with as far as the wide receiver. And I look at it, I'm like, I don't know if Cleveland really wants to give the draft capital to Arizona because we know it is an asking price for DeAndre Hopkins, and he looks great. But that the price speaks for itself, and it might be a risk. Brandon Cooks, we know, wants out of Houston, and he's going to do it for a good asking price. So this leaves me my question. Do you kind of address it in the draft? Because I think these wide receivers I'm looking at in the draft, I mean, we saw it one year where there was about 6-7 of them, and only 5 produced. And the 2 were very questionable. I think you know that draft. Jalen Reagor was terrible.
Oh.
There was one that was just real bad. So could we possibly see a little of that this year?
Man, we had Dane Brugler on, and we was talking to him about he's a draft analyst, and we've talked to a lot of those guys on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, and we've asked, like, okay, how good is this draft? And they're like, well, usually we have about, guys that we may have 30, 40, 50 prospects that could have a first-round grade. This isn't that draft. I may have 15 guys that are in my draft they get first-round grades. So that means that there's going to be some people that get drafted in the first round that only have second-round grades, but traditionally in other years would have went in the second round or lower, which gives you an opportunity if you're a team like Cleveland who does not have a first-round pick. It's a deeper draft in the second or third. You can get good value in those drafts. This draft is not that. Then on top of it, it's not a great receivers class, right? You got guys like Jalen Hyatt out of Tennessee, Jackson Smith and Jigba out of Ohio State. He didn't play all year, had a hamstring injury, and they don't know how fast he is. So there's a lot of different guys that they have, but there's not necessarily the Garrett Wilsons, the Olaves in that draft class. So
Jameson Williams, yeah,
Jameson Williams, like all those guys came out ready to play and made plays. So I don't think this is that draft. And I'm not trying to I look at it like this as rookies. I go back and watch some of the teams that made it. I'm really big on watching the playoffs and seeing what those teams are doing compared with what the Browns are doing.
Yep.
A lot of those teams didn't have any rookies that were just really destroying it until the end of the year.
Oh, I agree.
Kansas City, they had the end of the year. Those rookies started to get acclimated to the speed of the game. They started to understand things. They got their feet wet, and then they were able to pay dividends in the playoffs. For the Cleveland Browns, I would much rather you tell me, give me a guy that I know can catch the ball. Give me a DeAndre Hopkins, and I'll worry about a receiver later on. We got a lot of experimental receivers on the roster already that haven't produced in David Bell and Anthony Schwartz. Go get me somebody that can play and catch the ball in January and February.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will tell you, I mean, anybody that picks up that one kid, Johnston from TCU, that's a hard gamble because I know the program. And I know that that's one of those that's kind of spotty. And the last thing you need is a high draft pick that is just going to underperform in some ways. So, evaluating. So I want your thought on this because of in division. So we know Joe Burrow's great. We know he's a great quarterback with Cincinnati. They got a great product. We know Pittsburgh, they are rebounding themselves back because it's past the Big Ben era. They've got Kenny Pickett, and they're not paying him anything. And they're going to really build talent around him. And then Cleveland, I think Cleveland has a chance to shine. And they've got a chance to really make some noise this next season. What are you seeing as far as with the Lamar Jackson deal? Because I did speak with one of the guys who covers the Baltimore Ravens. It's a hard-pressed conversation. I feel like if I'm Baltimore, I don't give a damn how much I got to come out of pocket. I'm winning 80% of my games. And the playoffs thing, he will figure it out. And what did he do? He already won a playoff game. So losing that kind of asset Baltimore just kind of feels a little irrelevant to me if that happens, right?
Oh yeah, listen, don't tell them nothing. Don't say that to them. I need them. Hey, Lamar, if you're listening, you worth every penny. Go check out them waters elsewhere. They don't.
South Florida looks beautiful this time of year. Go on to Miami.
You deserve nothing but the best. You know, like these guys don't get it, man. You know, Baltimore and Pittsburgh are for the most part. Baltimore or Cincinnati is like, you know, playing our cousins, right? You know, we're not too upset if Cincinnati plays well. Like, you know, like we got a bunch of friends that live down by the Cincinnati, Columbus area. There's a split. So, but when it comes to Baltimore and Pittsburgh, we despise.
I'd be like, somebody go in there and break up this thing, because if I got Myles Garrett swinging the helmet again, I'm like, yeah, somebody get some help.
These guys is out of here. So I look at that 230, and that's the great part about it. People was mad about Deshaun Watson getting $230 million. Hey, look, you can say whatever you want about Jimmy Haslam. Jimmy Haslam said, look, if that's the running price to get me in the conversation, and trust me, if Deshaun Watson does not work out, that's going to be horrific. It's going to be we're going to be behind the 8 ball a long time. But if it does, it was worth every penny of it, because now we can say we can come to the table and say we can compete. But for the Baltimore Ravens, they're losing their mind. They need to go back and look at how difficult it is to get a quarterback. Like we said in the opening monologue, the Browns have been snake bitten. No pun intended. The Browns have been snake bitten for the last 40 years, and they've tried every way to acquire a quarterback. See, the Ravens are a little bit, they're a little spoiled. They got Flacco. Right after Flacco, they turned around and got Lamar Jackson, right?
And they've had a great defense, And
they've had a great defense. So that's sustained success for almost 20 years right there.
Yep.
So now they're like, oh, well, it's easy to get this quarterback thing right. We know exactly what it is. No, please do not fool yourself. If you get rid of Lamar Jackson, you can be in a place where you're just like us. Turning over quarterbacks, trying to find one. Second round. It's a bunch of teams in this league that have not had quarterbacks forever. You can look at Detroit. You can look at the Washington Commanders. There's all kind. Look at the Indianapolis Colts after Andrew Luck retired.
Oh God. And not only that, but here in Vegas, we've got the Jim Irsay collection, and it's an entire, event with concerts. I'm like, look, it still doesn't make me good to feel that, knowing that you got rid of Frank Reich and you're messing this whole thing up, and Chris Ballard's just over there like chattering his teeth. Like, I don't know how long I'll take this, but it is interesting though, because I think about that. Like, I remember the Tony Banks years. I even remember the time when they had Kyle Bowler. They had, they had a bunch of quarterbacks that tried and couldn't make it through. But that's where I feel like Baltimore would be back in that abysmal spot again if that happens. But it is a competitive division through and through, because the North, here's what I will say, and I've said this several times years ago, because living in Vegas and being a betting guy, I've never, ever betted games that involved the AFC North matchups, because they were always unpredictable. So I'm like, I look at it now, the level of competition starting to come up. And so this is a must for the Cleveland Browns to really revamp, re-energize, and really take this division by storm.
Yeah, AFC North is a tricky division. You look at it, and I think you phrased it and put it in perspective really well when you look at the trajectory of each team. Pittsburgh is a perennial power. I always tell people they wanted to throw dirt on Pittsburgh's grave here in Cleveland, and I told them, listen, Pittsburgh Steelers is always 500. They gonna worst they gonna do what is 8, 9, 9 and 8.
Yep.
They're not gonna be terrible.
And what's their strengths? Defense, wide receivers, and even offensive pieces. But they've got to fix that offensive line. That's the only weak spot.
Yeah, the offensive line is in trouble. I think Deontay Johnson and Pickens are a nice duo. I like their running game. I like what they're able to do. It all depends on if they can hit on some more pieces, how long Hayward can play, and is TJ Watt going to stay healthy? They'll try to fix that offensive line and fix some more guys up front. So these are the areas in which the Pittsburgh Steelers will be able to do something, because now they can put all their energy and attention towards saying, okay, let's fix up front. Let's get the defense back to where we want to go, and then we can really evaluate Kenny Pickett and see exactly who he is or what his upside is as a quarterback. You look at the Bengals. I mean, they are, I would say, probably one of the scariest receiver scores in the game. And I'm glad they're doing what they're doing, because the thing that they've done is they've stopped all these dumb talking points in Cleveland. The talking points where, we got to get 5 all-pro linemen. We should draft a lineman every year. Or, you can't take a receiver that high, G-Push. You can't. It takes 5 to 7 years for you to turn it around. No, the Bengals drafted Joe Burrow. They did not draft Penei Sewell. They went and got Jamar Chase, and then they were in the Super Bowl.
Yep.
And so now you can't use it. And we're playing this team, right? And it's to a point where it was like, if you got one good receiver, that's all you need. They said, "No, I'm gonna go get 3. Give me 2 Higgins and Tyler Boyd, and we still got Joe Mixon." So the thing about the Browns is they have, and the scary part is, the Browns have just as much talent as all those teams, if not more.
I agree.
I mean, guys that are all pro, Joe Bitonio. You got guys, Emerson Martin Emerson was great as a corner last year. And Newsom was good as a corner last year. He just happened to be not as good as the rookie Emerson. Myles Garrett just gets you 17 sacks a year. Not to mention Nick Chubb had 1,500 yards, Mari Cooper 1,100 yards. You look at that roster, you're supposed to say, wow, these guys are great. So it's not like they're far away. They just have to be consistent and put it together. And the quarterback is a big part of that.
I 110% agree with you, my friend. And the fact of evaluating exactly what Cleveland has, but it's funny because I see literally the same thing. Like, it's not like they're that far away. They're close. They're one of those teams that it's one big swing that will literally get them over the hump. So real quick before letting you go, so we know free agency, it's going to be a lot of fun. And we know that there's a lot of trade talks. How do you see the Cleveland Browns really tacking on free agency? And are there some names you kind of see are on their sites come March 15th?
Well, there's some fool's gold. There's some fool's gold out there. When you get all excited, first thing you got to look at it with the Cleveland Browns is cap, right?
Yep.
So they have a decision to make on John Johnson. I think if they let him go, they could get about $10 to $12 million from releasing him. He was a big-time free agent with them, signed a couple years ago, and I was super excited to get him here. I don't know if he was playing in position. Joe Woods was playing a defense in which half the time I couldn't even tell if they was lined up correctly. Right. Or what their fundamentals were. So they have to make a decision on whether or not it was just a bad fit with Joe Woods, or they can revamp him and under Jim Schwartz, have him play a different way. You look around, Greg Newsom is like, I don't like playing nickel corner. I want to play outside because outside corners get the big contracts. Well, we'll see how that works out. So he's a little upset right now, but everybody says that in the offseason. It's different when it comes to time to play because you really don't got no choice unless you're going to hold out. I don't see that being a problem. So the secondary with Denzel Ward looks pretty good. Now in the free agent, and one of the big names that I'm looking at just got released is Bobby Wagner. Yeah, he would fit so beautifully what we're trying to do. First of all, we didn't have a chance in hell last year. With the linebackers and defensive tackles we had. It was horrible. At one point in time, the Atlanta Falcons ran the ball 12 straight times on us all the way down the field and embarrassed us. Marcus Mariota threw 7 passes. I said, this is crazy. I think Bobby Wagner gives you graded out as one of the highest defenders, 90 overall according to Pro Football Focus. He's a captain. Everywhere he goes, he's fast, he's athletic. I know he's a little older at 32 years old. I don't know how much money he wants for a contract and how long of a long-term deal he wants. But Bobby Wagner is a guy that I would love to plug and put on our defense. I think the couple guys that might be fool's gold, we got Daron Payne for the Washington Commanders, and that may not happen. I mean, he's going to be trying to get, $20 million a year. And I just don't think the Browns have $20 million again. Another one that I think is full go is Hargraves from
Javon Hargrave. Yep.
Hargraves from Philadelphia. He's another guy I would love to have. But again, these guys are not cheap. These dudes are looking for 20-some plus $1 million. I don't know. And then plus, for the Commanders, why wouldn't you bring them back? The best part of their defense is the best part of their team is their defensive line with Sweat, Chase. You got him and Allen from Alabama. Why would you do that? Your D-line is stacked. And so I'm looking at those two guys as guys that probably will be outpriced a little bit. And when you get to the receiver market, there's some guys you can look at. Robert Woods was just released a little bit ago. There's a couple of guys that are out there that I wouldn't mind having. DJ Shark is another guy that you could look at. He's going to be a free agent. But I think the two guys to watch for is Brandon Cooks and DeAndre Hopkins. If you can get one of those, I don't know what it looks like. You might have to give up a 3, might have to give up something next year. The Browns don't have that much capital. But I'm all for it, because if you can get a guy that is comfortable with, and look at Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow, if you give somebody he's comfortable with, and speaking of Deshaun Watson, it can take your offense to a new level, and you can depend on those guys who have been through the battles and wars.
Good stuff. Good cut, like fresh cut takes right from there. I got myself a fresh cut. I mean, I'm looking at that barbershop sign right from there, and I'm like, this is some fresh stuff. But appreciate your time, Garrett. Where can everybody find you with everything Cleveland Browns this offseason?
Hey, man, thank you. I appreciate you, man. We've been working and trying to get this thing together for a while. I appreciate your patience. You guys can all visit, check me out. Barbershop radio show. That's every single Saturday, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. If you missed the show, it's nationwide. You can just download the free Odyssey app and you can listen. Also, you can find me Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. That is every single day, Monday through Friday on YouTube. Me, Jay Crawford from Cold Pizza, First Take, Adam the Bull. We are on every single day from 11 to 1 p.m. Check that out on YouTube. Browns Locked On Browns podcast every single day on Browns. Me and Jeff Lloyd, we do that podcast and we drop those episodes every single day, usually by 4:00. And you can download that wherever you get your podcast. And then finally, the Barbershop YouTube channel, you can check that out. I'm on there. I put blogs up on there, so you can check that out. And if you want to look, just search Garrett Bush and it's up on there. So yeah.
There you go, folks. Absolutely love it. I'm going to be locked on the Browns this offseason because it's going to be an interesting one, but very, very excited for what free agency and hopefully for what the draft is going to bring us, because next year it's all in or nothing at this point. So yes, appreciate the time, Garrett. Have a great rest of your weekend, and we'll definitely see how the Browns do.
All right. Take care.
Take care. All right, so shifting on, and we're heading on to the NHL Trade Deadline news, of course, because there's a lot of rumors brewing up, and the guy really, really smart, too. Great kid, knows a lot of his stuff, covers the NHL with the New Jersey Devils. He's joining me, Trey Matthews. So, all right, so I got news on this. We got a little clarity. So it was just said from TSN that Timo Meier, that his two front runners are the Devils and the Vegas Golden Knights. So those are the two teams right now that are looking into it. I look at the Devils and I'm like, they get Timo Meier. That's a hyper-aggressive team with Jack Hughes, who has officially arrived, by the way, and who's looking really, really good. How are you kind of outlooking this?
Well, I'm not sure if you saw the news or not, but Barbashev was actually just recently traded to the Vegas Golden Knights. So I think that puts the Vegas Golden Knights out of the running by default. And you need to remember that the Vegas Golden Knights prospect system, not really all that good. So
yeah, I agree.
I believe this is the New Jersey Devils' deal to lose at this point. Now, there are some backups that they could look at. You can look at like Max Domi. You can look at Brock Besser. So if Timo Meier doesn't work, you still have some more options on the table. Now, I've said it on my show before, I would love to have Timo Meier on this roster, but for the right price. So I think what's stalling these negotiations is probably that I have a bad feeling that the San Jose Sharks are asking for Dawson Mercer. Now, my overall thing is simply this, which is, given how well Dawson Mercer has performed the last few games, and that's me understating it. I think Dawson Mercer is off the table, and he's 21 years of age, and he has a bright future. So I think you would have to look at other players. So look at some of our prospects not named Luke Hughes or Shimon the Mets. But I think Timo Meyer, the possibility of him becoming a Devil, I think it's a very, very good scenario and a good situation. However, I have been let down before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it is interesting because the New Jersey Devils this year, I love the fact that they're building around with that young core with Will Butcher and, of course, Nico Hischier and Jack Hughes. So it is interesting to kind of look at with their young core, how they're building them up and how they're looking from it. So I do want to talk about the emergence of Jack Hughes because most people, when I saw this, I said, look, don't get ahead and don't fool yourselves. This is a real good hyper-aggressive scorer who's going to find his groove, find his rhythm. This year, he's an all-star, and he's really looking like the promising prospect everybody in New Jersey's been looking for. How impressed have you been with watching him this season?
I've been impressed, but at the same time, I don't mean to toot my own horn, but I kind of expected it because Devils fans saw his surgence last year, but the problem was he was hurt. So he got hurt the second game of the year, and then toward the end of the year, he didn't even finish. So we knew how good Jack Hughes was, but in his 40 or so games, he was able to put up 56 or so points. So in limited playing time, Jack Hughes was able to just make the most of it. Mm-hmm. So we saw the potential. And I said before the start of the year that if Jack Hughes stays healthy and if he puts the New Jersey Devils in playoff contention, I'd say you have to put him into the running for the Hart Memorial Trophy because that essentially means he'll have a Taylor Hall type of year. Mm-hmm. So I knew it was a long shot. I knew a lot of people were going to give me a lot of crap for it, but it's coming into fruition. The Devils are second in the Metropolitan Division. They're within striking distance of the Carolina Hurricanes. Jack Hughes hasn't missed a beat ever since coming back from his day-to-day injury. It was an upper body kind of thing, but luckily he's fine and he's recovered nicely. And Devils are back to their winning ways. Just thrashed the Philadelphia Flyers 7-0 in their previous matchup. But Jack Hughes has been a great player for New Jersey Devils. I've had the chance to speak with him once. He's a man of few words, but he's proud of the team taking steps forward, and obviously he's taken a lot of steps, and he's also looking forward to his brother joining the roster within the next month or so once the University of Michigan's season comes to an end. So we can't wait to see Luke Hughes and see what he could do on the defensive side of things and possibly play with his brother long term. But overall, Jack Hughes has been the truth for New Jersey Devils. That's why I gave him the nickname The Truth, because everything we've said about him has in fact come true. When he was drafted first overall, we said this kid can possibly lead us back into relevancy. This guy can be the future of the league. He could take over. And if it wasn't for Connor McDavid and Connor McDavid somehow, some way taking his game to an even bigger level, an elite level status, more so than he usually does, then honestly, I think Jack Hughes would be the favorite to win the Hart Memorial Trophy, given the narrative. Devils were not projected to go to the playoffs. I don't know how many people projected for them to be lottery teams, but I'd say more people projected for them to finish into that position. No one anticipated for Jack Hughes to be this good. And now here we are. We're in late February. The New Jersey Devils, there's limited games left in the schedule, and barring anything catastrophic happening, like having one of the biggest collapses in all of sports, they're going back to the playoffs. And I didn't even mention the 13-game win streak. I didn't mention Jack Hughes' hat trick in late November. That's when I felt like he started to pick it up. But it's been a great year for Jack Hughes, Jesper Bratt, Nico Hischier, and everything is just coming into fruition for the Devils organization.
Really exciting stuff. And there's two positions I definitely wanted to evaluate too that I thought have really moved what the Devils, what they needed to fulfill. So first of all, the goaltending with Vitek Vanacek. I mean, the funny thing is, and I had Dan Holme on the show, and he even said it too, like the inconsistencies he had in Washington has just gone away the second he went to New Jersey. How impactful has that been for Vanecek really producing and really kind of being that force that the Devils needed when they needed to get offense going?
You know, it's funny for Vitek Vanecek. I actually said that the New Jersey Devils could hypothetically get him during the course of the offseason because I said they would have to make a trade because he's a restricted free agent, not an unrestricted free agent. But the Devils were just searching for that suitable backup for Mackenzie Blackwood. So It was just like, who's available? Could it be Holtby? Could it be Kemper? Could it be Vanecek? Who's available? Could it be Husso? So the Devils were just searching for a suitable backup because obviously we've kind of gotten to some bad luck with the Corey Crawford situation. We got into some bad luck with Jonathan Bernier and his situation. I don't think he's going to suit up in another NHL game ever again. But Vitek Vanecek, I think what people refer to for Vitek Vanecek was that during the course of the playoffs, yes, he made a lot of saves, but let's face it, if you look at his numbers first glance, you just see that he didn't really step up his game come the playoff time. So, and you solidify your legacy in the playoffs. So I think that's what Washington Capitals fans remember Vitek Vanecek for. But once he got to the Devils, it was just, and he was given that chance because remember, Mackenzie Blackwood went down with an MCL sprain, which sidelined him for an extended period of time. Vitek Vanecek he took leaps and bounds. He stepped up to the plate big time. He's become a fan favorite. And quite honestly, I think come next year, if he's able to continue what he was able to do this year, come next year, I think he could be in the running for the Vezina trophy race because if he might get a few votes here and there, but at the same time, if he was like a favorite or whatever the case might be, it would be the most out of left field winner you had in recent memory. But I think he's getting his name into the NHL world just a little bit more, especially given how well the Devils have performed this year, because you got to look who's stepping up the game. You mentioned Jack Hughes. We mentioned Jesper Bratt. We mentioned Nico Hischier. Dougie Hamilton has come up big. Dawson Mercer has come up big. And Vitek Vanecek in between the pipes for the Devils has come up big. So I think Vitek Vanecek is making a name for himself in the NHL. And I think come next year, if he, like I said, if he's able to repeat that same success, then I think he can legitimately have a fair shake at the Vezina Trophy race.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's kind of funny because I kind of put Vitek Vanecek in the same similar like diamond in the rough as I'm looking at Boston's Linus Ullmark. I mean, the fact that being in Buffalo and how he produced from there just didn't really look all that attractive. And then the second he comes into Boston with Swayman, like it worked out perfectly. Bruins are obviously on fire in the Eastern Conference. So I do want to revert back to that because Dougie Hamilton. So that's the interesting part. So I knew the second they got Dougie Hamilton, I said, this is a change in this defense. The defense is going to start to get better. And not to mention, too, the retiring of PK Subban. That had to open up some holes as well for New Jersey to really fill in. So how did you really evaluate this defense? And is there maybe something that could also be adjusted a little more, especially when you're playing Boston, you're playing Tampa, you're playing, the Carolina Hurricanes? Are there some names you're kind of looking at?
Well, with Dougie Hamilton, he's great on the offensive side of things, but his defense can be iffy at times. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not, but still a great big addition for New Jersey Devils. And when PK Subban retired, it was the question during the course of the offseason, who's going to take his space? And right now it seems like the New Jersey Devils, they have a revolving door for that final defensive spot. So we've seen Kevin Ball in the lineup. We've seen a lot of other prospects just go in and out of that last defensive role. I think next year it's going to be a competition between Shimon Nemeth and also Luke Hughes to see who gets that final defensive spot. But obviously you got Jonas Siegenthaler, you got Ryan Graves. You have a lot of solid pieces on the defensive side of things for the Devils. And also John Marino. John Marino, in my eyes, has been very underrated during the course of the year because we saw this especially during the 13-game win streak. He knows how to smother his opponents because the prime example that I use is when the New Jersey Devils played against the Edmonton Oilers. I saw John Marino take away the passing and shooting lanes of Connor McDavid, one of the greatest players to ever play the game. And it wasn't just him. I saw like 3 skaters in front of Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl, whatever the case might be. Now, I know Connor McDavid scored in that game, but as the game progressed, I think the Devils did a good job of just taking away his airspace. And when I saw Connor McDavid also tried to check John Marino into the boards at one point, John Marino shrugged it off, acted like it was nothing, didn't stumble, didn't fall, didn't do anything. He just maneuvered the puck back into neutral zone. So the defense has definitely been somewhat solid for New Jersey Devils during the course of this year. And I think they definitely have a bright future, like I just mentioned, with Luke Hughes and Shimon Nemeth set to possibly join the roster next year. So, the defense has been phenomenal. Ryan Graves, he has a great plus minus. And, I'm really excited to see how this defense develops going forward. Now, it's just a question like, what's going to happen to Brendan Smith? Because Brendan Smith, a lot of people don't really like him. But the one thing I say is that he's a good leader in the locker room. And it's proven to be dividend. It's been proven to be good dividends for New Jersey Devils because they needed some veteran leadership. And obviously with the addition of Andre Palat, Eric Haula, John Marino, a few others, you're able to get sort of that playoff experience and sort of players who've been in that situation before. But sometimes Brendan Smith gets costly penalties that aren't really necessary, to say the least. But overall, the defense, the blue line definitely has a bright future for the New Jersey Devils, and I'm excited to see what comes next year. And I think it's going to be friendly competition between the Mets and Luke Hughes, to see who can get that final defensive spot. But and also the big question mark is what's going to happen to Damon Severson, because regardless of what he does, I think he's the odd man out, just because he's going to become I believe, a restricted free agent at the end of this year. And I believe this money can be used for good use elsewhere. So I think Damon Severson, his time as a New Jersey Devil, I think is starting to wind down, especially come the trade deadline. However, I haven't really heard his name into too many trade scenario discussions, but I think it's in the Devils' best interest to possibly trade him away. But along with Miles Wood, Mackenzie Blackwood, he's one of the longest tenured Devils, and obviously you want him to be a part of something special, especially since the New Jersey Devils are primed to make the playoffs.
Yeah, and so here's what I do want to discuss as well, because the NHL playoffs, we know the Eastern Conference is obviously brewing up. I mean, the fact that the Boston Bruins just made a big trade with Dmitry Orlov, so they got another added piece to add to their arsenal. The Toronto Maple Leafs, they added in Ryan O'Reilly. I like the move, that the fact that he's very productive, but is that the piece that's going to get them past their first round woes? I don't know. And then the Rangers acquired Vladimir Tarasenko, hyper-aggressive offense. That's going to be tough competition. So looking at the Eastern Conference, are there some teams that the Devils could possibly get fits from?
That's a good question. Basically get fits from?
Yeah, so basically teams that could be giving them a hard time.
It's so hard to assess this team because, like I said, at the beginning of the year, would you say that this was a playoff team? Yes or no? Be honest.
I think by the beginning of the year, because of some of the moves, I think they would have been a playoff team, but they wouldn't have been in the position they are now in the Metropolitan. I think they would have snuck into that wild card spot.
Exactly. So the main goal for New Jersey Devils, because I think they're set to play the New York Rangers come the first round. And they've actually competed very hard against the Rangers during the course of this year, because obviously this was before the Rangers made any moves. So they got Vladimir Tarasenko. That was on the trade target for New Jersey Devils as well. I'd say their main goal for right now is get past the first round, because it's been a while since the New Jersey Devils have been competitive in the playoffs. You would have to go back to their Stanley Cup Finals run back in 2012 when they lost to the LA Kings. And then a few years ago, they played against the Tampa Bay Lightning and they were handled in 5 games. That was the year I believe Taylor Hall won the Hart Memorial Trophy.
Yep.
So it's just like the Devils want to be back to relevancy, like I said, in regard to Jack Hughes. So I think their main goal is to get out of the first round, and then you build your team a little bit better come the off season. So I think that's the overall mindset. I think that's the overall goal for the Devils, just get past the first round, because Could they hoist up the Stanley Cup? I don't personally see it. I don't think they're ready because you have so many players who haven't seen the light of day after 82 games, including some of your best players like Jack Hughes, Jesper Bratt. Nico Hischier has some playoff experience, but it's been a while. Andre Palat has obviously won a couple Stanley Cups. And you got some other players who've made it into the playoffs, but still it's not that much. So I think the Devils, they're just not quite ready yet to compete for a Stanley Cup and hoist up the trophy. But at the same time, they got something special brewing. So I think at least my personal goal for them, get past the first round and then see where it goes from there. Because I think if they're able to get past the first round, I think they've shattered expectations if they haven't done so already.
Yeah, I agree with you because I know that the Eastern Conference is a very tough conference itself because I can honestly name at least like 4 teams that I know that are going to be really, really competitive, maybe a 5th, but there's even a mixture of some teams that can kind of, they're knocking on the door. They're sneaking in. There's some teams that can get past that first round, and then afterwards, that's as far as they go. But if there's a bright future for them where it's like, that may have been that's our mark, but we ain't done yet. And then that's when the next year really goes on. That's where I really look at next year's off season and the draft and then seeing how they really, really produce themselves. So real quick before letting you go. So I did see some spurts with the Devils where they remembered the 2003 Stanley Cup championship and the fact that the great Marty Brodeur, all the rest of the great players. I mean, what was that when you evaluated that 2003 team? What were some takes you got out of that team that something even the Devils would like to maybe bring back from there? Because I mean that was a special team from back then.
You know what? I'm actually going to rewind the clock back to 1995 because I actually interviewed recently Bruce Driver, who was a part of that 1995 Stanley Cup team for the New Jersey Devils, the team that won the first Stanley Cup in Devils history.
Yeah,
was one of the captains. So I asked him, like, does this current team compare to your Stanley Cup team? And the one thing that Bruce Driver told me was that, look, they were underdogs as well. That 1995 Stanley Cup team, they were projected to not really go that far, and they basically had to run that trap defense essentially. And they didn't use the word trap in their vocabulary. And personally, I think it's justifiable that the Devils use the trap defense because they were the underdogs. You got to do what you got to do.
Yeah,
it's not, and a lot of people are going to say, "Oh, it made the game boring," or yada yada yada. They literally ran a playbook that I think the Montreal Canadiens first utilized.
Yeah,
problem with that. So it's just like my overall thing is like they ran a playbook that worked for them. So Bruce Driver basically told me, like, look, they weren't favorites to win the Stanley Cup. They had to work for it. And he said, when you get to the playoffs, it's a totally different animal.
Yeah.
So you gotta look at fatigue. You got to look at strength. You got to look at the overall mindset because everyone is 0-0 to begin the playoffs.
And you got to think that separates the boys from the men in the middle of all that.
Absolutely. So, like I said, when I asked Bruce Driver, when you look at your Stanley Cup team and when you look at this one, is this a team that could win the Stanley Cup? He was just like, got to see what they do during the course of the playoffs because obviously it's not just one done and then you move on to the next team. It's not even a home and home kind of scenario. This is a series, and you got to beat them 4 times in order to advance.
Yeah, it's really true, man. I mean, it's a hard competition, and I love it too because I haven't been so big in hockey like originally growing up, but once I started to really get into the game, like I had family that live in New York and they're big time, Ranger fans, but watching it bits and pieces, I was like, okay, I'm kind of understanding a little bit of it. And then sure enough, living in Vegas, the Golden Knights make their mark in 2017, which to me, I've always said was a fluke of a year because of the fact of it was a battle cry year. It was one that it was a little lightning in a bottle. And then now they're trying to find their identity. So it's very difficult for a lot of teams to really win the Stanley Cup because it's not only just the look and the weight of the trophy in your hands. It's what comes behind all of that. And I've had the chance to really get myself acquainted with Sir Stanley, and there's a lot of stories in front of it. So, but it's so exciting as hockey fans and even as hockey players out there, where that feeling of the Stanley Cup is just it blows out of proportion out of any other trophies you see in major sports. But yeah, it's going to be interesting watching this young core, but I'm very excited of what the development will be for the Devils. But, you know, come this trade deadline, March 3rd, I mean, the phones are going to be ringing. There's going to be a lot of outlooks, and with the amount of games left.
Now. They're ringing right now.
Oh, yeah. So okay, we ain't done yet.
I don't know if this episode is live or not. Is it live?
Yep, it's live.
Okay, so as soon as I log off, Timo Meier might be heading to Newark at this very moment. We'll see.
Oh, man. If that happens, I mean, man, that is going to be something real special brewing up in the works for the Devils. All righty, Trey, I appreciate your time. Where can people find you with everything New Jersey Devils?
You can find my personal Twitter page at TreyMatt4, TreyMatt, and the number 4. And you can also find the show's Twitter page at Locked On Devils. I do a little bit of trolling, and it's a little bit of my secret identity in a sense, but hey, I'm just having fun with it. So that's where you can find me. And Jake, I want to apologize for appearing late because as you know, time zones are a little different since I actually live on the West Coast for the time being. So I just totally I totally got it mixed up. So I want to apologize in that regard.
Oh, no worries at all. And I've had a couple of guys, you know, like, it's totally understandable. That's why I like clarifying a lot of the time zones. I do that for that reason, because I know a lot of people, it's like, are they West or East Coast? It does get a little difficult, but totally understandable, man. But I'm very happy you were able to come on. Great content with the Devils. And of course, ASU grad as well, ASU student. So really excited for a lot of great things to come. You've got a lot of great potential in you, man. And a lot of people are going to be seeing your work and just going to be blown away. So appreciate the time, Trey. Have a great rest of your weekend. And let's just see how this back half of this season is going to turn out, and NHL playoffs around the corner. It's going to be full of just entertainment from there. Appreciate it. Take care of yourself, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Jake.
Absolutely. There you go, Trey Matthews, man. The Devils, oh, man, that's going to be some exciting stuff. I love their young core. I love the fact that, like he mentioned, with Jack Hughes, I mean, the kid is phenomenal. He's hyper aggressive, and he's somebody that really made huge steps forward. So, as I've said, kind of recapping it, so Evgeny Dodonov is headed to the Dallas Stars for Denis Gurianov. So there's a little bit of a value there for the Dallas Stars, but he did end up mentioning it. So Drager reports that the Capitals have interest in Jacob Chichurin and could flip Boston's first round to go and get him. So that seems to be the news now. But I'm going to look at exactly seeing if there's anything else that's been breaking right now in NHL, because there has been a lot of news kind of coming around. So, and like he mentioned, there's a potentiality that the Golden Knights may end up getting Ivan Barbashev from the St. Louis Blues. They're kind of blowing this thing up. They clearly need to get some picks. They clearly need to end up getting more talent in the building, and that's where I think they're kind of standing at right now for the St. Louis Blues. All right, great content stuff all the way around. Amazing interviews. I appreciate everybody who came up onto the show today and just hanging out with me. Trey Matthews, huge shout out to him for the New Jersey Devils. Eric Bush, we're Locked On Browns. And of course, Lauren Willand for Locked On Boston Red Sox. Great stuff. We've had great interviews all weekend long. Appreciate all of you guys for joining on. If you haven't done so already, like, follow, subscribe, hit the bell button for all latest notifications. What in the hell are you waiting for? There's a lot of great stuff you do not want to end up missing, so keep yourselves up to date. And of course, the show is sponsored by SeatGeek.com. Promo code SNAKESPORTS to get $20 off of your first purchase of your first ticket. Use SeatGeek.com and do not lose your seat. Promo code SNAKESPORTS for $20 off. This is Jake the Snake signing off. Appreciate your guys' time. Thank you for hanging with me and appreciate your support. And we'll see you next weekend on the next episode of the Snake Sports Talk Show. Have a great rest of the weekend And for NHL fans, we will be seeing you on the corner with Trade Deadline March 3rd. Take care, guys.